Well, good afternoon, ladies and gents. We are off again. And I thought it was about time I started bringing you around the back streets of some of my favourite neighbourhoods in London. Today, we're in Sloane Square. Now, Sloane Square is probably one of the most elegant and chic squares in London. Very affluent neighbourhood. But that wasn't always the case, ladies and gents. It's originated as a small actual little fishing village in the area. But what I wanted to do today is kind of show you some of my highlights of this area and bring you to some rather unique places that you wouldn't think of visiting. Join me on a little trip around the back streets of the beautiful Chelsea. So today, you guys, I wanted to start the tour here at Sloane Square Station. And just before we exit, I wanted to show you a rather peculiar feature. Something that you'd miss, but you see this rather large metal pipe just running high above the station here. This is where the former Westbourne River, it contains the Westbourne River, one of London's lost rivers. Now, the Westbourne originates in Hampstead and flows southwards near Kilburn through Maida Vale and into Hyde Park. It then continues under Knightsbridge in Chelsea before reaching the Thames, where we can see some of its overflow later on. So, curiously, one of the lost rivers. But this is also the station where Peter Llewellyn Davis, who was, in fact, the inspiration for J.W. Barrie's Peter Pan, actually committed suicide here in 1960. On the 5th of April 1960, he had dealt with a lot of pressure being known as Peter Pan all his life, and it's where J.W. Barrie met the Llewellyn Davis boys one time in Kensington Park, and they are said to be the inspiration for his classic Peter Pan. But Peter Llewellyn Davis had taken on a lot of responsibility, and he resented the pressure of being known as Peter Pan. Actually, their relationship is quite strained in later life. J.W. Barrie had taken on the role as guardian to them when they had both lost their parents. Regretfully, their relationship became very strained, and he actually left them out of his will. But Peter Llewellyn Davis, aka Peter Pan, turned to alcohol. He became an alcoholic, and he was actually drinking upstairs here at the Royal Court Hotel before that very fateful night where he actually took his own life here on the 5th of April in 1960. Now, I'm not quite sure where this tour is going to take us today. We may head in a little bit towards Belgravia, but today I'm kind of winging it. I want to show you some very intriguing and interesting spots around London that you might not be familiar with. So, it's hard to imagine that in 1750, this area would have been all fields. Now, to start the tour, I just want to explain to you about Chelsea. So Chelsea extends from the World's End in the west to Sloane Square in the east. So we're only covering a part of that today. And from the Thames north to the Fulham Road. Its name is supposed to have originated from Saxon times, where it would actually have been, referenced a chalk wharf which was situated near the river. So for many centuries, Chelsea was more of an isolated fishing village. And during the Tudor period, however, the likes of Sir Thomas More and Henry VIII built beautiful palaces down here, and then it became more fashionable for the elite and the rich. But it became known then as the Village of Palaces, and we're going to take a little stroll down Lower Sloane Street here. So the Village of Palaces, however, did lack a lot of road connections to urban London. But it wasn't until Charles II actually built the King's Road, and that allowed him to pass quickly through West London straight into Westminster. But originally that was a private road and remained private until the 1830s. But then it very quickly connected the village of Chelsea as such with urban London. So that's when kind of urbanization began and people started to move here. But look at some of the stunning homes along here, folks. We're definitely in, when I walk around here, sometimes I feel like, what have I done with my life? I mean, these stunning brownstones, just love them. They're a bit like the ones in Manhattan, I think, in New York City. But these elegant homes are usually mostly privately owned. But I'm going to bring you down to a rather unique place. And I want to introduce you to some very famous chaps that you might run into in London. And they're called the Chelsea Pensioners. Look at the wonderful Sloane gardens. They're just beautiful. These lovely little private enclaves as well. And as you'll have seen in so many of my other videos, they have their own private gardens. And these are the Key Gardens you'll be familiar with, as I've mentioned so many times before, from the movie Notting Hill, where Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts famously try to climb over. So these gardens are exclusive gardens for the residents of the neighbourhood, accessible only by key. So I want to take you down to the Royal Hospital Chelsea, which is effectively a retirement home for the Chelsea pensioners. Now, they are quite distinguishable. You'll see them walking around central London. They're very, very personable. They always love a good chat. So how it works here in the Chelsea Pensioners Hospital is they have to have been non-commissioned officers in Her Majesty's Army, or His Majesty's Army. They have to be single and have no dependents. And what happens is they give up their pension when they arrive in exchange for free accommodation, food and clothing, and they live in this truly beautiful retirement community. So behind these gates, and I'll get a much better view for you in a moment, is the Royal Hospital Chelsea. And it's the home of the Chelsea pensioners at Burton Court. Now I'm hoping we'll run into one or two of them so you can see what they look like. But this is possibly one of the finest buildings in London. And like every one of the finest and most magnificent buildings in London, it is, of course, Sir Christopher Wren. So it was founded by Charles II, and it was founded for his retired soldiers. Now, it was actually Nell Gwyn, they say, who was the famous mistress of King Charles II, was the one who took absolute exception to the fact that so many of these soldiers were destitute, and her sympathies lay as very important for these soldiers with the king, and she convinced him to build a hospital for destitute soldiers and sailors that she had seen in London streets. She persuaded King Charles II to sponsor this project and to house these forgotten soldiers at the time. Now, forgive me at the moment, I'm so sorry, I'm trying to get the proper angle over here. I did try to get permission to go on the grounds and film inside there, but they were very reluctant because it is the home and the private home of the pensioners. But guided tours are available, and the Chelsea pensioner himself will take you around. So this will give us a great view of it here now, coming up on the right hand side. So when Charles II founded this beautiful building for his retired soldiers, it was Christopher Wren who actually modelled this beautiful home on the Hôpital des Invalides in Paris that was used for French veterans as well at the time. Wren also designed, as we have seen in my Greenwich video, Greenwich Hospital, which looked after veteran soldiers for over 170 years until 1869. There's also a wonderful gardens at the back, the Ranelagh Gardens. It's where Mozart played a symphony in there actually as well. We'll try and get some photos of that, but they've made that it's accessible to the public, but they don't allow filming. So obviously when I went and asked for permission, I mean, it would look fairly suspect if I arrived back today and said, right, I just want to have a walk around the gardens. But I believe Casanova used to hang out there trying to court all the very attractive ladies. Many's occasion he was spotted down in the Ranelagh Gardens. But look at this magnificent building. So the grounds are extensive. They really and truly are beautiful. Oh, There seems to be a cricket match of some sort going on up here. Ooh, let's go and have a look. Summer in London, you guys. So they come and go as they're pleased, and you'll see them quite a bit around Westminster, and that's a typical Chelsea pensioner uniform. Except it would be a really bright red jacket. Now let's make our way down here. We'll see what's happening. They're all in their whites. It looks like they were playing either bowls or cricket. Here we have the pineapples on top. Did you know the pineapples were a sign of extreme wealth in this country? They were in massive demand, and they would be imported for dinner parties. People paid up to £200 for a pineapple, and it was to imply they were super wealthy. So it's heavily guarded, but the Ranelagh Gardens are down at the back, so if you get a chance to wander around here, I absolutely would. Now, coming up on the left hand side as well is one of those unique museums that you can get to visit inside as well, and it's the Army Museum. So the National Army Museum. Might have a look inside and see if they're susceptible to people videoing, we'll see. Okay guys, so we just got inside the door of the National Army Museum, which is fascinating. There's an anti-aircraft gun. And this is part of the Berlin Wall, some of which we had already seen at the Imperial War Museum. So this is a section of the Berlin Wall that dates to about 1994. Let's see what's written on it. It says presented to the National Army Museum by Transport and Movement Squad, the 62 Transport and Movement Squad, the Royal Logistics Corps in Berlin. And they date from 1345 to 1994. How special. Look at this. So we have one of our foot soldiers, full dress uniform, Grenadier Guards. So it says they have been involved in coronations since 1661. So here we have some of the soldiers that come on a regular basis to guard the Queen as well. We have the King's Troop Royal Artillery. It's a gunner. This is a staff sergeant from the Queen's Gurkha Engineers. The Bugler, the rifle. Chap here is a member of the Royal Welsh Regiment. Then we have a pipe major from the Royal Irish Regiment. He was on duty this morning actually at the changing of the guard. Then we have a corporal of the Royal Military Police. And then we have a private from the Royal Regiment of Scotland. The kilt would give us a hint there. A Lance Corporal, the King's Royal Hussars. And finally, the Sergeant of the Royal Gibraltar Regiment. And these are the ones that firmly are given the distinct honour also of guarding the palaces. I've seen them quite frequently down at the palaces. So your obligatory gift shop, of course. And you can make purchases to support the museum. And here are our Polish allies. Following the fall of Poland in 1939, many Polish soldiers managed to escape to Britain, where they formed the Polish Corps, comprising an armoured division and a parachute brigade. Okay, now I'm not going to take you through all of it. We'll just show you a few of the highlights. Now this one here is quite impressive. Could you be a soldier? Yes or no, it says. And this is a Universal Carrier MK2 from 1944. The answer to that for me is no. So this exhibit is called The Army at Home, and I'm already intrigued because they have an exhibit here on the Civil War between 1642 and 1649. When the devastating civil war broke out between King Charles I and Parliament. And it sparked so many disagreements over religion, taxes, and the limit of royal power. And we all know how that ended because he executed the King, Oliver Cromwell, in 1649 on the 30th of January. Oh, this is great because it goes the whole way up then to the Restoration with King Charles II, the son of the executed king, and the restoration of the monarchy. This is wonderful for children too, to learn about their history. And here we have the conflict in Scotland and Ireland. So that's Stuart Parnell, Louis de Deroux, 1689 to 1980 to 1891, 1691. So sorry. Didn't sleep an awful lot last night. Forgive me. The Jacobite Rising. This takes us up to the rebellion. Ooh. In Ireland, 1914 to 1922. Ireland being divided over the issue of Home Rule. I believe they're still a bit divided over it. It's not quite finished. It's the time of the execution also of Michael Collins and the Easter Rising. Some incredible history in Ireland as well. And finally, what have we got here? The gauntlets worn by Brigadier Justine Mazejewski at the lying in state of Queen Elizabeth II, 2022. Okay. Present at Her Majesty's funeral. Okay, this is beautiful. So the state trumpeter uniform of Sergeant Arthur Thulist in 1911. He paraded in the presence of senior royals. The Household Cavalry's band wear gold coats and jockey caps called state dress. Yeah, we've seen them in so many of my coronation videos and funeral videos, of course. So pomp and circumstance, they play a huge role in the ceremonial duties. Yeah. Now, Chelsea has for so long been associated with the greatest concentration of artists, political activists, its gorgeous vibe and its proximity to the river, of course. Kind of attracted a lot of bohemians to the area as well, including rock stars and famous actors and royalty. So it has long been associated with so many intellectuals and creatives over the years. And I'm gonna take you down this street though. And this one is hard not to get excited about for me personally as an Irish girl. But this is Tite Street. And at number 34, its most famous resident, alongside John Singer Sargent and James McNeill Whistler. Well, there's one here first. Let's see who lived here. This is Peter Warlock. He was a composer. He lived here from 1894 to 1930. And here was the home of the incredible writer, the witty, very smart, intellectual that was Oscar Wilde, ladies and gents, who lived at number 34, and he lived here from 1884 to 1895 with his family. But it's also, I'm going to get a better view of it, where he wrote most of his most famous work. And his incredible novel, The Importance of Being Earnest, and The Picture of Dorian Gray, were all partially written inside this very building. But this house also led to his demise, because this is where he is said to have met his future lover, Lord Alfred Douglas, or Boise, at a dinner party here in 1884, much to the absolute horror of his father, who was at the time the Marquis of Queensberry. He was so disgusted by the relationship, he actually called him out. And he gave him his calling card at a club, accusing him of being a sodomite. He also arrived here in a fit of fury one time, calling out Oscar Wilde, and it provoked Oscar Wilde taking a libel action against him, which eventually led to his downfall, of course, because he was found guilty of sodomy. And he spent time later imprisoned for gross indecency. And he was actually forced to sell this house to pay for his legal fees. But there was an incident where the Marquis of Queensberry arrived to confront Wilde in his library here. And Oscar Wilde is quoted as saying, "In my library in Tite Street, he was waving his small hands in the air in epileptic fury." Eventually, when he did pass away, he passed away broken-hearted. Boise lived in Hampstead, actually, and I think we passed his house on my Hampstead tour. Now, Lord Haden Guest lived here from 1877 to 1960. He was another famous physician. I love these blue plaques. They're a wealth of knowledge open to us all over London. And that's going to take us up to our very last stop in a couple of minutes. But first, enjoy a little recap of our beautiful walk along Cheyne Walk, ladies and gents. So we're going to start with a couple of the houses. There's so many close together, but I suppose one of the first major actors, for the benefit of my American friends that we have here, lived here at number 2, and his name was John Barrymore. I believe he might have been of the same Drew Barrymore same family. Number 3, ladies and gentlemen, was the home of one of the most famous rock stars in the world. It was the former home of one of the Rolling Stones, Keith Richards, ladies and gents. What an icon of rock and roll history lived here also. And right beside Keith Richards is where George Eliot lived. Now, George Eliot, she actually passed away in this house, and she has her own circular blue plaque you see there on the wall. She spent the last 3 weeks of her life here at number 4. But also, for the benefit of my American customers, it was also purchased in 2015 by Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City. So right there close together, John Barrymore the actor, Keith Richards, George Eliot, Michael Bloomberg. I've also learned that number 6 was also the home at one time of Crown Prince Pavlos and Crown Prince Marie Chantal of Greece. Now, a little further down, maybe 4 doors down, you'll see one of the famous prime ministers in this country lived, and that was David Lloyd George. He lived at number 10. The one with the bush there, the beautiful tree there, was at one time the home, right directly behind the tree, of David Lloyd George. So Keith Richards lives on the street, but I'll also show you the former home of Mick Jagger and Mariana Faithfull, who had a property down here. That's coming up in just a moment. Now, our next one is 6 doors down, and this is quite relevant to our walk that we took in Highgate Cemetery. Now, of course, George Eliot buried in Highgate Cemetery, but so was the wife of Dante Gabrielle Rossetti, and she had died of laudanum poisoning, effectively today known as an opium overdose. She herself, there's a rather grim story of him burying his poetry alongside her when she died, and he went into bankruptcy as a result not long after, and he was advised to dig up her grave to retrieve the poetry. And when they did so, her hair had continued to grow and it had entwined in amongst the pages of some of his poems that he wanted to republish. I believe they soaked them in bleach of some sort. A very bizarre, depressing story. He was very reluctant to dig up her grave for a very long time. However, eventually he had no choice. It's also said he was quite the zoologist, or had his own menagerie inside this house, and had received several complaints of the noise of the peacocks he randomly kept in the back of his house. So no doubt the death of his wife had a terrible impact on him, but there was also talk of him having, I believe, monkeys and lions in there as well. Now, that's a bit of hearsay. So that would have been home of the amazing Dante Gabrielle Rossetti. And that is number 16 here at Cheyne Walk. So this is number 19, directly here behind the tree. This with the white shuttered windows. And 19 through to 26. You see the very end house at the end of the street here? This was King Henry VIII's manor house, demolished in 1760. So we're going to see a few more along here. 22 is quite fascinating. That's 20, 21 and 22. Because number 22 was rented. Oh, here it is, that beautiful home, the gorgeous tree. It was rented at one time by Dame Elizabeth Taylor. So apparently she rented this beautiful home during her Broadway stint here when she was acting in the West End in the Broadway play The Little Foxes. So now here at number 23 is the famous footballer Sol Campbell's home. He'd spent 20 years as a player in the English Premier League. He was 11 years as an English international. He took up the role as a football manager for a period of time then as well. He played with Tottenham Hotspur for years. And that's 23. Now this is number 27. Now this corner house here, this was former home of Bram Stoker as well, ladies and gents. He did live in here for a period of time. He was, of course, the theatre manager of the Lyceum Theatre. And how we all know him, most famously for the author of Dracula. Actually, I'm going to take a little detour and we're going to walk up Oakley Street. And I will come straight back onto Cheney Walk shortly. This is my first time being here on Oakley Street at number 43. Was the home of Bob Marley, ladies and gents, who, after an attempted assassination on his life during a concert in Jamaica, he moved here to London for a period of time, and he had many famous concerts in London and a huge following. He became part of the London scene. He lived here in 1977 in the Lyceum Theatre, if memory serves me correctly. Bob Marley and the Legends Live was recorded inside there, just tying us back into Bram Stoker and the Lyceum Theatre and Tavern as well. This is the home of Bob Marley, legendary prophet, poet, artist and reggae aficionado. Right, let's get back onto Cheney Walk. Just continuing on Cheney Walk here, you'll see this beautiful, almost cul-de-sac area. Lovely and quiet and reserved. But number 48 here, this beautiful home as well, in the 1970s, was sold by Mick Jagger. He once lived here at number 48 Cheney Walk alongside his partner at the time, Mariana Faithfull. But interestingly enough, apparently he has returned back here and he has bought the former home of Isambard Kingdom Brunel, which I'll be showing you very shortly as well. So 48 Cheney Walk, former home of Mick Jagger and his partner at the time, Mariana Faithfull. Now we're also coming up here on this incredible red brick building. This is the Carlisle Mansions, now converted into flats. But in fact, it is said several famous people have resided in flats in this beautiful, beautiful building in the Carlisle Mansions, including T.S. Eliot, who lived at flat 19. It's also where Henry James spent the last years of his life and died in a flat here at number 21. Ian Fleming lived in here. Sir Ian Fleming, the author of James Bond, of course. He also worked in the Treasury, where we believe got many's the influence for his much-loved character to come. He lived in here, in flat 24. Sol Campbell again, the footballer, who we've just seen his home, has an apartment in here. Georgie Best, the famous footballer as well, legend of Manchester United fame. He lived in here for a period of time. And finally, Laurence Olivier and Jill Esmond once lived here in the 1930s. And look at this stunning, stunning building. Now we're back on the main road, and I wanted to draw your attention to this beautiful house. This is known as Lindsay House. Now it's quite simply known as number 100, but it covers 96 there all the way up to 101. And inside here is also the home of Isambard, Kingdom Brunel, who lived in here for a period of time with his father, Sir Mark Brunel, who lived at 96. He was the man responsible for designing the Thames Tunnel. But that is where we believe now is the home of Mick Jagger, inside here at 96, ladies and gents. Obviously highly gated there. Can't get no satisfaction getting over those gates. Sorry, that was a bit naff. Let's continue. Now we're just coming up to our last couple of houses here in the Cheyne Walk part of our rich and famous tours in London. And this one, highly significant, one of the most famous artists and painters in British history. This is the home, the former home, of J.M.W. Turner. And also, I believe, the home, or one of many homes, of Ronnie Wood, ladies and gents. So, rock stars and artists all on the one street. Beautiful little property here. And with the final one, at 122 here, is where George Melly once lived. And we have to turn the corner here, just off 122, situated right here. Would have been the former home at one time of George Melly, famous jazz musician, and also for a period of time Sir Ian Fleming. And finally, folks, I just wanted to give you a glimpse of what is one, in my opinion, of the most beautiful monuments in London. Now, I will plan on walking through Battersea Park and doing a tour in there. It's perfect in the summer, and head over the bridge. But what you're looking at right now is the Peace Pagoda. This was an inspiring movement all over the world, and it's a Buddhist stupa, which is a mound-like structure that contains relics and overall is a place of meditation, a site to practice peace and unity for people of all races and backgrounds. You may not know this, but there are 80 peace pagodas around the world, and this one resides in South London's Battersea Park. And the site in Battersea was built as part of Buddhist monk, and I'm going to get this wrong, I'll try and do it right, Nichidatsu Fuji's advocacy for world peace and non-violence. So we'll take a closer look in our next video. I'm hoping to take a little stroll around the beautiful Battersea Park and explore and talk to you a little bit more about this incredible Peace Pagoda. Sinead signing out here on the Chelsea Embankment. See you soon. Have a lovely day.